unless and until the American people demand the restoration of those moral and spiritual priorities, I simply do not believe that we're going to solve any other problems as well.
Big Mac Fuck from North Carolina State. He's a worthless piece of shit. He's a paragon of hate. He's a redneck.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week is Martin Wagner, we think. Martin's on his way in, so I'm going to start without him. And if you want to get through or if you don't want to get through on the telephone today, or if you're unable to get through once we put the number up, you can always email tv@atheist-community.org. That email goes to myself, the co-hosts, everybody behind the scenes, and we can't promise to answer every single one of them, but we answer a great many of them, and we definitely read all of them. So any feedback, questions, criticisms, concern, we've gotten email from around the world now that Google Video's up, and lots of good questions, some of them which have been rolled into a feature in our newsletter. Some of them have been talked about on the show. Some of the corrections have been talked about. We'll probably talk more about those as they come in, because one of the things is I don't profess any expertise in anything at all. I'm not you know, I don't have 20 degrees, and I'm not extremely knowledgeable in some area in anything that would qualify as expertise. So I'm prone to making mistakes, and that's true whether we're talking about, you know, Big Bang cosmology or evolution or philosophy or religion. And it's one of the reasons that I try not to say, oh, you're such and such religion, so you believe this. Because I would be silly. I'd be starting off with the potential of being completely wrong. It's much more beneficial if I say, okay, I don't care what label you put on it. Tell me what you believe and why you believe it. And then we can have a discussion about whether or not I agree with you, which may be the case. There are a number of people who consider themselves spiritual, which is a word I despise because I think it's useless, or religious in some non-conventional fashion. And when we really get down to brass tacks about what we're talking about, I agree with them. We had a letter come in that was basically saying, you know, I don't want to use labels like that, but you know, the individual was confused about, or not even confused. There's a concern about, you know, if you trace a causal chain back, something had to start the whole universe. This is just the thing that makes the most sense to us. And not knowing what the answer is, and believing that humans have some limited form of communication and that there is a grander one, well, that's a claim that I don't think anybody has evidence for. I mean, it might be a nice idea to think that that there's some better, more universal or transcendent form of communication, some deeper way of knowing that we just don't seem to have access to, and that this is what religion tries to do in order to answer these tough questions. It's an interesting idea. I'm a huge fan of science fiction, and I don't say that in a way that where I mean to belittle anybody's, you know, beliefs. I understand people are. I mean, this is a sincere quest. We're all on a quest to gain, hopefully, the best understanding we can about reality. And that's not always easy, and it's extremely uncomfortable to be faced with a question where the answer currently is, I don't know. But that's not a justification to insert some panacea answer that I can't think of any way the universe could have come into existence, so therefore it makes sense to me that a God did it. I mean, because by definition we all know that a God is something that could have created a universe. No. We don't know anything about a God. We've invented this label and all of its characteristics in order to solve the problem, and then stuck it in there to solve a problem. You can't answer a mystery with a mystery. And so while I find myself in agreement at a core level with some of the people who write in or call in who might identify themselves as spiritual or religious, I don't do that. On another level, I disagree with them. I think they're giving away too much ground. Yeah, it's great and it's interesting to think about the possibilities of things that might be, but that doesn't mean they're true. And what I'm talking about is what I actually believe or disbelieve, what I think is true, what I think is not true. And so if you're one of the people out there who belong to some religion or are not part of a religion but think you have some insight or a view or believe things that you think we would reject, we'd love to have you call in and talk about it. Explain what you believe, why you believe it. I'm open to discussions on this. And matter of fact, I'm fascinated by discussion on this. It's one of the reasons why I do the show. So without further ado, we have a special guest in the studio. Martin is here.
I made it.
You did make it.
I did make it. On like right at the moment that I think everyone in Austin decided they were going to come home from 4th of July weekend at the same time. So it was a little bit nerve-wracking.
You know, if you'd actually just come to the lecture this morning.
Yeah. If had I done that, but ended up having, which I wanted to go to, and I'm very sorry I missed.
Well, we had a lot of fun at your expense while you weren't here, but now that you're here,
yeah,
we're of course grateful. This is Martin Wagner, everybody, somebody who used to host the show long before I was even an atheist.
That's kind of boggling to
Isn't
think
it?
about. I mean, that is really strange to think about.
It strikes me as odd every time I think about it.
Yeah.
So what have you got for, oh, by the way, I mentioned the email address. There's also a few things at the website, including a frequently asked questions page, where you can go to find out more about not just the ACA, but atheism in general, atheists, what do we believe, what do we not believe, why. But keep in mind that, as we said about 1 billion times on this show now, atheism isn't a dogma, it's not a worldview, it's not a philosophy, there are no tenets, there's no such thing as orthodox atheism, despite some people who'd like to use that label. There's no such thing as dogmatic atheism. It's simply a rejection of theistic claims. The only reason that there's a label for it is because these are important issues. I mean, if people were saying, you know, I believe in Bigfoot, and Bigfoot wants me to make sure that, you know, gay people can't marry, I'd have to call BS on that.
That would
and I would probably
be an interesting position for Bigfoot to take.
I know.
Just sort of like you have to.
Well, you know, maybe we've encroached too much on Bigfoot's land.
Yeah.
He's trying to stop the spread of this virus of human beings.
Yeah, because it would, I think, you know, somehow threaten his existence in some way, gay marriage, because that's what it does.
I would be Bigfoot's greatest enemy because, you know, I'm less hairy.
There is that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what they're afraid of.
Right.
That was, by the way, one of the reasons I was a Christian for so long.
Oh, you were more hairy?
I was convinced that God made a few perfect heads and that the rest of them he put hair on.
Ah, well.
I later discovered that this was actually supposed to be a joke and was a flawed argument. And I got mad at God, and that's why I'm an atheist now.
Well, that all makes sense.
Sure, somebody will buy all of that.
Yeah, that's probably the best explanation I've heard yet.
So